If you've ever wanted to taste Brazil in a single bite, this is it. Picture a warm kitchen, the kind where the window is slightly fogged from the stove and the air smells like chocolate in celebration. In Brazil, that smell usually means one thing: Brigadeiro. Not the fancy, reinvented version. Today we're going straight to the traditional classic, the one that shows up at birthdays, family gatherings, and those simple moments when someone says, "Let's make something sweet," and everybody suddenly appears in the kitchen. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you how to make Brigadeiro with only 3 ingredients: sweetened condensed milk, butter, and cocoa powder. That's it. No complicated tools, no mystery steps. But there is one technique that decides everything, and I mean everything: low heat and constant stirring, patiently, until the mixture turns glossy, thick, and finally lets go of the pan like it's ready to be transformed into those soft, irresistible little candies. And I want you to stay close for this part because the most common mistake is also the fastest way to ruin Brigadeiro. People get impatient, turn the heat up, and suddenly the chocolate burns, the texture goes grainy, and what should be creamy becomes dry and hard. It's the kind of mistake that doesn't look dramatic at first, until you try to roll it and it fights you, or worse, it tastes bitter. We're not doing that. We're making it the way Brazilians trust: slow, steady, and smooth. While we cook, I'll also tell you the quick story behind Brigadeiro, born in the 1940s and somehow becoming an edible symbol of Brazilian parties, those tables full of laughter, paper plates, candles, and music in the background. And yes, this is an energy-packed sweet, the kind that makes you smile fast, so we'll talk about enjoying it with balance, without guilt, just with intention. Before we start, tap like if you enjoy recipes with real cultural history behind them. And tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? If you want more Brazilian classics made simple, subscribe, because the finishing detail at the end is what separates good Brigadeiro from unforgettable. Now, let's go to the stove, because the first swirl in the pan is where the magic begins. Picture a small Brazilian kitchen at the end of the afternoon, that soft golden light coming through the window, and the quiet promise that something sweet is about to happen. This is where Brigadeiro feels most at home: simple, familiar, and somehow always tied to a celebration. And the best part is you don't need a long shopping list to get there. In the pan, it starts with just 3 essentials: sweetened condensed milk, a small knob of butter, and cocoa powder. When you pour the condensed milk, it moves slowly, thick and glossy, like it already knows it's destined to become candy. The butter melts and disappears into it, bringing that smooth richness. Then the cocoa goes in, and at first it looks like a mess: dark streaks, pale swirls, but keep going. As you stir, the color evens out into a warm chocolate brown, and the smell changes too, from pure sweetness to something deeper, almost toasted. Now here's where technique matters more than anything. Keep the heat low. Not kind of low. Truly low. Brigadeiro isn't rushed, it's persuaded. And you stay with it, stirring constantly, scraping the bottom and the corners so nothing sticks, nothing scorches. You'll feel it transform under your spoon. At first it's loose and silky, then it thickens, getting heavier, slower, like the mixture is gathering itself. If you've ever been tempted to turn up the heat to speed it along, that's the most common mistake, and it changes everything. High heat can burn the chocolate without you noticing at first, leaving a bitter edge. Or it can cook too fast, pushing the mixture into a dry, stiff texture that never becomes that creamy, melt-in-your-mouth Brigadeiro people remember from Brazilian birthdays. And there's a moment you're waiting for, subtle but unmistakable, when you drag the spoon through the center and the mixture opens like a path, then takes a second to close. Or when it starts to pull away from the bottom of the pan, almost like it's letting go. That's your sign you're close. If you're enjoying this kind of step-by-step, give the video a like. And tell me, have you ever tried Brigadeiro before, or is this your first time bringing a Brazilian classic into your kitchen? Stay with me, because in the next part we're going right up to the point where one small decision can make your Brigadeiro either good or unforgettable. Now let's bring this to life on the stove, because the magic of Brigadeiro doesn't come from fancy ingredients, it comes from patience. Picture a simple Brazilian kitchen, a sturdy pan, a wooden spoon, and that warm, chocolatey smell starting to rise like a promise. Add the sweetened condensed milk first, then the butter, then the cocoa powder. Before you even turn on the heat, stir slowly until the cocoa disappears into the milk and the color turns uniform, like a silky chocolate river. This step matters more than people think, because if the cocoa stays in little pockets, you'll feel it later as bitterness or graininess. Now, low heat. Not lowish, not I'm in a hurry. Low. This is where most people accidentally sabotage their Brigadeiro. I know it's tempting to crank the heat so it thickens faster, but high heat scorches the chocolate, and once that happens, the flavor turns harsh and the texture goes from creamy to dry and stiff. Brigadeiro should never feel like a brick. It should feel like a soft, fudgy bite that melts as you chew. As you stir, keep the motion steady, scraping the bottom and corners, like you're polishing the pan. The mixture will begin to change. At first it's loose and glossy, then it starts to pull together, heavier, slower, almost like it's breathing. You'll notice the spoon leaving a trail that takes a second longer to close. Then comes the moment Brazilians wait for, the release. When you drag the spoon through the center and the Brigadeiro pulls away from the bottom, gathering into one cohesive mass, you're close. Tilt the pan slightly. If the mixture slides as one and doesn't immediately flood back, you've hit that sweet spot. If you're enjoying this and you can already smell that cocoa in your imagination, give this video a like. And tell me, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? The food, the music, the traditions, or the everyday life? If you want more Brazilian classics explained in a calm, clear way, subscribe, because in a second I'm going to show you the next step where good Brigadeiro becomes unforgettable. Now, let's talk about the part that looks simple, but is where Brigadeiro becomes Brigadeiro, the heat and the stir. Picture the stove in a Brazilian kitchen on a weekday afternoon, that quiet moment before a celebration begins. The pan goes on, the butter melts first, and you keep the flame low enough that you could hold your hand near it without pulling away. That's the mood. Patient, gentle, unhurried. As the condensed milk and cocoa warm up, the mixture starts to change color, going from pale to a deep, glossy brown. And this is where your arm becomes part of the recipe. You stir constantly, not frantically, but steadily, scraping the bottom and the corners as if you're polishing the pan. Don't stop, my aunt would say, leaning in like it was a secret. If you stop, it catches. You can almost hear the soft, sticky sound of the spoon dragging through chocolate, that slow resistance building as it thickens. Here's the most common mistake, and it's tempting because we all want things faster: turning the heat up. High heat scorches the cocoa, and even if you don't see it right away, you'll taste it. The Brigadeiro loses that creamy, fudge-like texture and turns dry, grainy, or oddly hard once it cools. If you've ever tried a Brigadeiro that felt like it snapped instead of melted, that's usually why. Low heat is not being careful. It's being correct. Watch for the sign that tells you you're ready. The mixture starts to release from the pan. When you drag the spoon through the middle, it opens a path and takes a second to close back in, like a slow wave. Then tilt the pan a little, the mass should slide together in one glossy mound. That's the moment you turn off the heat, and the smell of warm chocolate and butter fills the whole space like a promise. If this is helping, leave a quick like so I know you want more Brazilian classics like this. And tell me, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil, food, traditions, music, everyday life? If you're enjoying the way we're cooking and learning at the same time, subscribe, because in a second I'm going to show you the small finishing detail that separates good from truly unforgettable. Now watch what happens when patience pays off. The mixture is thickening, turning the deep, glossy chocolate color, and you can actually hear it, the soft, steady scrape of the spoon against the bottom of the pan, like a quiet rhythm. Keep the heat low. This is the point where people get tempted to rush, and it's also where Brigadeiro decides whether it'll be creamy and tender or dry and stubborn. As you stir, look for the sign every Brazilian learns by feel before they learn by words. Tilt the pan slightly and pull the spoon through the center. If the mixture moves as one smooth mass and you can see the bottom of the pan for just a second before it slowly closes back up, you're close. Then comes the moment, it starts to release from the pan, gathering into a soft ball that follows your spoon instead of sticking. That's your cue. Turn off the heat immediately. I want you to imagine a kitchen in the 1940s, the radio low in the background, neighbors talking politics and celebration. They didn't have a pantry full of fancy ingredients, but they had condensed milk, cocoa, and a reason to make something sweet for a party. That's the beauty of Brigadeiro: it's simple, it's practical, and somehow it became emotional. In Brazil, it's not just dessert. It's the taste of birthdays, of paper plates and laughter, of just one more even when you promised yourself you'd stop. Now, scoop that hot mixture onto a lightly buttered plate. Don't touch it yet. Let it cool until it's warm, not steaming, because if you roll it too soon, it clings to your hands and you'll end up fighting it. While it rests, take a second and tell me, have you ever tried Brigadeiro before, or is this your first time meeting it? And if you're enjoying these Brazilian flavors and stories, a quick like really helps this reach more people who love cooking with meaning. Stay with me, because in the next step there's one finishing detail that separates good from unforgettable, and it's not what most people think. If you want more Brazilian recipes like this, subscribe, because we're about to roll these into the real celebration. And now comes the detail that quietly decides whether your Brigadeiro is just good or truly unforgettable, the finish. Not the sprinkles alone, but the moment before them. Once the mixture is off the heat, give it time. Let it cool until it's no longer steaming and you can touch the surface without pulling your finger back. That resting time lets the texture settle into that creamy, fudgy body Brazilians recognize instantly. If you rush and roll it hot, it sticks to everything, it loses shape, and the outside turns messy instead of glossy. I like to butter my hands lightly, just enough so the dough doesn't cling, and then roll with a gentle, patient pressure, like you're shaping something you don't want to bruise. You'll feel it, the ball becomes smooth, round, confident. Then comes the coating. Chocolate sprinkles are classic, but even here there's a little secret. Don't just drop it in and shake. Press softly, rotate, and let the sprinkles hug the surface. When you set it down, it should look dressed, not dusted. Picture that first bite, a thin crackle of chocolate on the outside, then the inside gives way, dense but tender, sweet but balanced by cocoa, warm memories packed into something the size of a small marble. It's easy to understand why this candy became the heartbeat of Brazilian birthday parties, lined up on trays, wrapped in tiny paper cups, always disappearing faster than anyone expects. And because it's rich, it's also a treat to enjoy with intention. One or two can be the perfect ending to a meal, or the perfect companion to a cup of coffee while the day slows down. Brigadeiro doesn't ask for a lot, just a little time, low heat, and your attention. If this helped you, leave a subtle like so I know you want more Brazilian classics made simple. And tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil, food, traditions, everyday life? If you'd like to keep traveling through Brazilian culture with me, subscribe, because in the next video I'm taking this same base and showing you a twist that changes everything without losing the soul of the original.